My daughter asked me to co-sign a simple loan. She said it was just a formality. The bank manager kept looking at me strangely, so I read the last page carefully. The room went silent when I asked one question. The call came on a Tuesday morning while I was replacing the sink trap in my kitchen. My hands were covered in that gray pipe grease that never really washes off, the kind that sits under your fingernails for days. I almost didn't answer. "Dad?" Her voice had that careful brightness to it, the one she'd been using since she was 16 and wanted something. "Do you have a minute?" I wiped my hands on an old towel and sat down at the kitchen table. The morning light came through the window at that angle that makes everything look honest, even when it isn't. "I've got time," I said. "Great. So, Brian and I are finalizing something really exciting, a property development opportunity. It's basically a sure thing, but the bank needs a co-signer. Just a formality, really. You wouldn't actually be responsible for anything." Brian, my son-in-law, the man who wore watches that cost more than my truck and somehow always had a tan, even in February. "What kind of property?" "Mixed-use commercial, near the new transit station they're building on the east side. It's going to triple in value once the construction finishes. We just need to move fast before someone else grabs it." I looked at the half-assembled sink on my counter. There was something about the way she said "we" that made my stomach tighten. "How much?" "The loan is for $400,000. But again, you're just the co-signer. It's basically like you're not even involved. The bank just needs to see that there's backup support. You know how they are." $400,000. I'd bought my house for $85,000 back in 1998. I'd paid it off 3 years ago, 6 months early. It was the only thing I owned outright besides my truck and my tools. "When do you need an answer?" "Well, that's the thing. We have an appointment at the bank tomorrow at 2. I know it's short notice, but this deal won't wait. Can you make it?" I could hear something in the background on her end. A voice, male, too far away to make out words, but I could hear the rhythm of it, urgent, pushy. "What bank?" "Crossroads Financial, the one on Market Street near the old theater. You know where that is?" I knew it. Used to be a savings and loan before it got bought out. Now it had one of those modern lobbies with uncomfortable chairs and motivational posters about reaching your summit. "I can be there," I said. "Perfect. Thanks, Dad. You're really helping us out. This is going to change everything for us, for our future. Our future, not your future, not our family's future, just theirs." "See you tomorrow," I said, and ended the call. I stood there for a minute, phone in my hand, looking at the grease stains on my jeans. Then I went back to the sink. The trap needed to be tightened just right. Too loose and it leaks. Too tight and the threads strip. You have to feel it. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the way she'd said, "formality." People don't usually call you for formalities. They call you for signatures. I got up around 3 and made coffee. The house was too quiet. It had been too quiet since Patricia left 8 years ago now. She'd taken the noise with her. The TV always running, the radio in the kitchen, her phone calls that lasted an hour. Now there was just the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the house settling. I pulled out my laptop, the one I'd bought refurbished 5 years ago and barely knew how to use. I typed co-signer responsibilities into the search bar. The results weren't encouraging. A co-signer is equally responsible for the debt. If the primary borrower defaults, you're on the hook for the full amount. It can affect your credit score. It can result in legal action against you. They can come after your assets. I read that last part 3 times. Your assets. I looked around my kitchen. The house wasn't much. 3 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, a garage I'd converted into a workshop. But it was mine. Every nail, every board, every window. I'd replaced the roof myself 2 summers ago. Spent 3 weeks up there in the heat, doing it right. I closed the laptop and drank my coffee in the dark. The next morning I put on my good jeans and the button-down shirt I wore to funerals. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw my father looking back. Same heavy eyebrows, same jaw, same way of standing like you're ready to lift something. He'd been a machinist. Died at 62 from lung cancer, probably from all the metal dust he breathed in for 40 years. He'd never owned anything except his tools and a paid-off Chevy. I got to the bank 15 minutes early. The lobby was exactly what I remembered. Too bright, too clean, chrome and glass everywhere. The chairs looked like they'd been designed by someone who'd never actually sat in a chair. A woman behind the desk smiled at me with perfect teeth. "Can I help you?" "I'm here for a 2 o'clock appointment. My daughter should be arriving soon." "Name?" "Jack Brennan." She typed something into her computer. Her smile flickered for just a second, just long enough for me to notice. "Of course. Mr. Brennan. Ms. Brennan and Mr. Hollis are already here. Conference room B, right through there." I walked through the glass doors and down a hallway that smelled like new carpet and air freshener. Conference room B had a window that looked out onto the parking lot. I could see my truck from here, the blue Ford with the dent in the tailgate from when I backed into a post at Home Depot. The door was open. My daughter Emily sat at the table next to Brian. She stood up when she saw me, came over, gave me a hug. She smelled like expensive perfume and something else. Anxiety, maybe. Or guilt. "Thanks for coming, Dad. This means so much." Brian stood up and extended his hand. He had one of those handshakes that tried too hard, firm enough to prove something. "Jack, good to see you. Appreciate you taking the time." He was wearing a suit, gray, tailored, probably cost more than I made in a month. His hair was perfect. His shoes were perfect. Everything about him was smooth and symmetrical and calculated. "Have a seat," Emily said. "Mr. Preston should be here any minute." I sat down across from them. On the table was a stack of papers, maybe 30 pages thick, held together with a black binder clip. The top page said, "Commercial Loan Application and Guarantor Agreement." The word guarantor seemed to take up more space than it should have. "So, Dad, like I said on the phone, this is really straightforward. The property is incredible. Brian can explain the details, but basically it's a can't-miss opportunity. The bank just needs to see that there's additional financial backing. It's standard procedure for loans of this size." Brian leaned forward, elbows on the table. "The East Side development is going to reshape the entire market district. We're talking about a minimum 30% appreciation in 18 months. We've already got interest from 3 potential anchor tenants. Coffee shop, yoga studio, one of those artisanal grocery places. The demographics are perfect." I nodded. I didn't ask questions. Not yet. The door opened and a man walked in, carrying a tablet and a leather portfolio. He was mid-40s, thinning hair, glasses. He had the look of someone who'd spent his whole career behind a desk and knew exactly how many days until retirement. "Good afternoon. I'm Dale Preston, Senior Loan Officer. You must be Mr. Brennan." He shook my hand. His palm was soft. No calluses. "Thank you for coming in." He sat down at the head of the table and opened his portfolio. He looked at Emily, then at Brian, then at me. There was something in that look, something I couldn't quite read. "So, as I'm sure your daughter explained, this is a commercial development loan in the amount of $400,000. The property in question is located at 1847 East Market Street, approximately 12,000 square feet of mixed-use space. The loan term is 10 years with a variable interest rate tied to prime plus 2 points. He slid the stack of papers toward me. "Mr. Brennan, you're being asked to serve as guarantor on this loan. That means that in the event the primary borrowers default on payment, you become responsible for the outstanding balance." Emily jumped in. "Which won't happen, obviously. We've run all the numbers. The rental income alone will cover the monthly payment with room to spare." Preston looked at her briefly, then back at me. "I'm required by law to ensure that all parties understand the terms. Mr. Brennan, do you understand that as guarantor, your personal assets could be at risk if this loan goes into default?" I understand, I said. Do you own your home? Yes. Free and clear? Yes. He made a note on his tablet. And are you currently employed? Self-employed, contractor, plumbing, electrical, general repairs. Annual income? Around 45,000. Another note, another glance. This one lasted longer. Mr. Brennan, I want to be very clear about something. If you sign this agreement and the primary borrowers fail to make payments, the bank can pursue collection against your personal assets, including your home. Do you understand that? He understands, Brian said, his voice taking on an edge. We've been through all of this already. Preston didn't look at him. He kept his eyes on me. I need to hear it from Mr. Brennan. I understand, I said. Emily reached across the table and put her hand on mine. Dad, I know this seems scary, but I promise you, there's zero chance of default. This property is golden. We're not asking you to give us money. We're just asking you to be there as backup. You won't have to do anything. I looked at her hand on mine. She was wearing a ring I'd never seen before. Diamond, big enough to catch the light, probably cost more than my truck. Preston pushed the papers closer. Why don't you take a few minutes to review the agreement? All signature lines are flagged with yellow tabs. I pulled the stack toward me and started reading. The first 10 pages were standard boilerplate. Definitions, clauses, legal language that wrapped around itself like wire. Emily and Brian talked quietly to each other while I read. Something about timelines and contractors and permit applications. Preston sat silently, his hands folded on the table, watching me. I got to page 15, and something made me stop. A section titled Liability and Recourse Provisions. I read it twice. Then I flipped to the back of the document, the signature page. There were 3 signature lines, one for Emily, one for Brian, one for me, but the order was wrong. My line was first. I looked at the text above the signature line. Primary guarantor and principal obligor. Not cosigner. Guarantor. Principal obligor. I looked up. Preston was watching me. Emily was looking at her phone. Brian was staring out the window. Can I ask a question? I said. The room went quiet. Emily looked up. Of course, Dad. What is it? I kept my voice level. Calm. The way you talk when you're tightening that sink trap and you feel the thread starting to strip. Who is the primary borrower on this loan? Preston shifted in his seat. Emily's smile froze. Brian turned from the window. What do you mean? Emily said. We all are. I tapped the signature page. This says I'm the primary guarantor and principal obligor. That means if this loan defaults, the bank comes after me first, not you. Me. Is that correct? Preston cleared his throat. Mr. Brennan, the loan structure is somewhat complex. Both Ms. Brennan and Mr. Hollis are listed as applicants. But given their current debt-to-income ratios and the size of the loan, the bank requires a guarantor with substantial collateral. In this case, that would be your home. So I'm not a cosigner. The term cosigner is sometimes used interchangeably, but technically no. You are the guarantor, the primary responsible party in the event of default. Brian stood up. Jack, listen, this is just banking terminology. It doesn't change anything. We're the ones making the payments. You're just there on paper. I looked at my daughter. Did you know this when you called me? She hesitated. Just for a second. But it was enough. Dad, it's the same thing. Cosigner, guarantor, it's just words. The important thing is that we're going to make every payment on time. You're never going to have to worry about any of this. I set the papers down and folded my hands on the table. When were you going to tell me that if this goes wrong, I lose my house? It's not going to go wrong, Brian said. His voice had an edge now. Irritation, like I was being difficult. Jesus, Jack, you act like we're trying to screw you over. We came to you because we trust you, because you're family. Family, I repeated. Yes, family. Emily's your daughter. We're asking for help. That's what families do. They help each other. I looked at Emily, really looked at her. She had her mother's eyes, dark brown, almost black, but right now they looked like a stranger's eyes. If this is such a sure thing, I said, why do you need me at all? Preston answered before she could. The applicant's combined income is sufficient for the monthly payment, but their existing debt obligations affect their qualifying ratios. The addition of a guarantor with unencumbered collateral allows us to approve the loan. What existing debt? Brian's jaw tightened. That's not really relevant. It is, if I'm putting my house up. Emily leaned forward. Dad, please. We've got some credit card balances, Brian's student loans, my car payment, normal stuff. Everyone has debt. It doesn't mean anything. How much? Dad. How much? She looked at Brian. He looked away. Around 80,000, she said quietly. I let that number sit in the air for a minute. $80,000 in debt, and you want to borrow 400,000 more. It's an investment, Brian said. You can't make money without spending money. That's basic economics. I looked back at the papers, at my signature line, at the words principal obligor. I need to think about this, I said. Dad, Emily started. I need to think about it. Brian slapped his hand on the table. We don't have time for you to think about it. The seller has another offer. If we don't move now, we lose it. Then lose it. Are you serious right now? Do you have any idea what you're doing? This is our future. This is Emily's future. You're really going to walk away and leave your own daughter hanging? I stood up, slowly. The chair scraped against the floor. I didn't say I wasn't going to sign, I said. I said I need to think about it. Preston spoke up. Mr. Brennan, you have every right to take time to consider this. I would actually recommend consulting with a lawyer before signing any loan guarantee of this size. A lawyer? Brian laughed. Come on, that's going to take weeks. We don't have weeks. I picked up the papers and tucked them under my arm. I'll let you know tomorrow, I said. Emily stood up. Dad, wait. Can we just talk for a minute? Just us? I looked at her, at the desperation creeping into her face, at the ring on her finger that cost more than I made in 6 months, at the man standing behind her who wore perfection like armor. Tomorrow, I said. I walked out of the conference room, through the lobby, past the woman with the perfect smile. I got in my truck and sat there for a minute, hands on the wheel, staring at the bank's glass doors. Then I drove home. I didn't sleep that night either. I sat at my kitchen table with the loan papers spread out in front of me, reading every word. The coffee maker burbled in the background. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, a dog barked somewhere down the street. Page by page, I started to understand what I was looking at. The loan wasn't just for the property purchase. There were line items for renovation and improvement, for professional fees, for working capital reserve. The actual purchase price of the building was listed at $280,000. The rest was overhead. $120,000 in overhead. I found the property listing online. 1847 East Market Street. The photos showed a run-down former retail space with boarded windows and a parking lot full of potholes. The description said, sold as is, significant renovation required. I looked up the property tax records. The building had sold 3 months ago for $220,000 to a company called Hollis Development LLC, Brian's company, so he already owned it. He'd bought it for $220,000, and now he wanted to borrow $400,000 using it as collateral, which meant he'd be pulling out nearly $200,000 in cash while I put up my house as guarantee. I sat back in my chair and rubbed my eyes. The night air coming through the window was cold. March in the Midwest meant the weather couldn't make up its mind. Snow one day, 60 degrees the next. My neighbors had their Christmas lights still up, the sad kind that look like they're too tired to blink. I thought about calling Emily. I thought about asking her directly if she knew what Brian was doing. But I already knew the answer. She knew. Maybe not all of it, but enough. At 4 in the morning, I made a decision. I was going to sign the papers, not because I trusted them, not because I believed in the investment, not because I thought I was helping my daughter's future. I was going to sign because now I could see the whole board. If I refused to sign, they'd find someone else, some other guarantor with collateral and good credit, and I'd lose any leverage I had, any visibility into what they were doing. But if I signed, I'd be inside. I'd have legal standing. I'd be able to see the payments, the contracts, the money flow. I'd know when things started to go wrong, and they would go wrong. I could feel it the way you feel a storm coming before the sky even changes. At 8 in the morning, I called Emily. "Dad?" Her voice was thick with sleep. "What time is it?" "I'll sign," I said. Silence. Then, "Really?" "Really." "Oh my God. Dad, thank you. Thank you so much. You don't know what this means to us." "I have conditions." Her voice changed. Careful again. "What kind of conditions?" "I want to see the business plan, every contractor estimate, every projection, and I want monthly updates on the property status and loan payments." "Dad, that's all proprietary information. Brian has investors." "Those are my conditions. You want my house, I want transparency." I could hear muffled voices, her hand over the phone. A conversation I couldn't make out. Then she came back. "Okay, Brian says that's fine. We can do monthly updates. And I want it in writing, a separate agreement that states I have access to all financial records related to the property." More muffled conversation, longer this time. "He says we can do quarterly. Monthly. Dad, monthly or I don't sign." Another pause. Then, "Fine, monthly. I'll have Brian's lawyer draft something." "Good. When do you need me back at the bank?" "Can you come today? Same time?" "I'll be there at 2. "Perfect. And Dad?" "Thank you. Really. I know this seems like a lot, but I promise it's going to work out. You're doing a really good thing." I hung up and poured myself more coffee. The word "good" rattled around in my head like a marble in a tin can. At 1:30, I drove back to the bank. The sky had clouded over, and the air smelled like rain. I parked in the same spot and walked through the same glass doors and sat in the same uncomfortable chair in the lobby. Emily and Brian were already in conference room B, so was Dale Preston, and another man I didn't recognize. Older, maybe 65, wearing a suit that looked expensive even to my untrained eye. "Jack, this is Harrison Wade," Brian said. "He's our attorney." Wade stood up and shook my hand. His grip was professional, measured. "Mr. Brennan, I understand you have some concerns about the loan structure. I want to assure you that everything here is completely standard for commercial development financing." "I'm sure it is," I said. I sat down. On the table was the same stack of papers from yesterday, plus a new document. 3 pages, stapled. "This is the supplemental agreement you requested," Wade said, sliding it toward me. "It grants you the right to receive monthly financial statements related to the property, including loan payment status, rental income, and major expenditures over $5,000. I read it. The language was dense, but clear. I'd get reports on the 5th of every month. Any failure to provide reports would constitute a breach of the supplemental agreement. "What happens if you breach this agreement?" I asked. Wade smiled. The kind of smile lawyers give when they think you're asking cute questions. "Then you'd have grounds to file a civil complaint, though I assure you that won't be necessary." I looked at Emily. She was watching me with those dark eyes, and for a second I saw the little girl who used to sit on my workbench in the garage, handing me tools, asking endless questions about how things worked. "Okay," I said. "Let's do this." Preston opened his portfolio and laid out all the signature pages. Yellow tabs marked each line. Emily signed first, then Brian, then me. I wrote my name slowly, deliberately, each letter a commitment I couldn't take back. When I finished, Preston collected the documents and tapped them against the table to straighten them. "Congratulations," he said. "We'll process these today. You should see the loan fund within 48 hours. Brian stood up and extended his hand. "Thanks, Jack. You won't regret this." I shook his hand and said nothing. Emily hugged me. "Love you, Dad." "Love you too," I said. We walked out together. In the parking lot, Brian climbed into a black Audi SUV with temporary plates. Emily got in the passenger side. She waved at me through the window as they pulled away. I sat in my truck and watched them disappear down Market Street. Then I took out my phone and called a guy I knew from my union days, Tommy Fisk. He'd quit the trades 10 years ago and become a private investigator. Mostly domestic cases, insurance fraud, that kind of thing. We'd stayed in touch, Christmas cards, occasional beers. "Jack Brennan," he said when he answered. "Long time. I need a favor." "What kind of favor?" "Background check, financial history, business records, whatever you can find." "Who's the target?" "My son-in-law." Tommy was quiet for a second. "This is going to cost you." "I know. And it's going to take time." "I've got time." "Name?" "Brian Hollis, lives in Riverside Heights, runs a development company called Hollis Development LLC. I could hear him typing. "Got it. I'll start pulling records tonight. Give me a week." "Thanks, Tommy." "Jack, you doing okay?" I looked at the bank's glass doors, at the reflection of my truck in the window. "Ask me in a month," I said. The rain started as I drove home. Light at first, then heavier. The wipers made that rhythmic squeak that meant they needed replacing. I'd been meaning to change them for weeks. When I got home, I went straight to my workshop in the garage. The space smelled like sawdust and motor oil and metal. My father's old toolbox sat on the workbench, dented and scratched. I'd inherited it when he died. Inside were tools he'd owned for 40 years, wrenches worn smooth, screwdrivers with tape-wrapped handles, a level that still read true. I picked up the level and held it in my hands. It was heavy, solid, real. My phone buzzed. A text from Emily. "Thanks again, Dad, you're the best." I set the phone face down on the workbench and didn't reply. Instead, I opened my laptop and started a spreadsheet. 3 columns: date, activity, notes. First entry, March 14th, loan signed, $400,000, property at 1847 East Market Street, guarantor, Jack Brennan. I stared at that last line for a long time. October came in cold and gray. The leaves turned brown and fell in clumps. The sky looked like old concrete. I spent the first week of October making calls. Contractors, inspectors, anyone who'd looked at the East Market Street property in the last 5 years. I asked them all the same questions. What's wrong with it? How much would it cost to fix? Would they recommend it as an investment? Every answer was the same. The foundation's shot. The permits are impossible. It's not worth the trouble. I recorded every conversation, compiled every report, built a file thick enough to stop a bullet. Then I sent copies to every real estate investor in the city. Jennifer helped. She had connections, email lists, professional networks. Within 3 days, the word was out. East Market Street was toxic, a money pit, a guaranteed loss. On October 10th, 5 days before the auction, I got a call from Preston at the bank. "Mr. Brennan, we've had several inquiries about the property auction. Most of them are asking about condition issues. Do you know anything about that?" "I might have shared some information. Property records are public. What you're doing could affect the auction results." "Good. Maybe it'll keep some poor bastard from making the same mistake I did. If the property sells below our recovery threshold, you'll be responsible for a larger deficiency." "I'm aware of that." He was quiet. Then, "You're planning to bid, aren't you?" "I'm considering it." "With what money?" "That's my business." "Mr. Brennan, I want to be clear about something. If you're manipulating this auction to reduce your liability, that could be construed as fraud." I'm not manipulating anything. I'm providing accurate information about a property's condition. If people choose not to bid based on that information, that's their decision. I'm going to recommend that the bank's attorney be present at the auction. You do that." He hung up. I sat there feeling my pulse in my temples. I was running out of time. The auction was in 5 days. I had $24,000. I'd need at least $150,000 to make a serious bid, which meant I needed to borrow money. The only thing I had left to borrow against was my truck. I drove to a title loan place on the south side. The kind of place with bars on the windows and a sign that promised fast cash. The man behind the counter had a mustache that looked like it was trying to escape his face. "What year's the truck?" 2015 Ford F-150. "Mileage?" 112,000. "Condition?" "Good. Runs perfect. Body's solid except for a dent in the tailgate." He came outside and walked around it, kicked the tires, looked under the hood. "I can give you 8,000. Kelley Blue Book says it's worth 15. Kelley Blue Book doesn't account for a dent in the tailgate and high mileage. 8,000. Take it or leave it." I took it. He made me sign a stack of forms. Interest rate was 30%. If I didn't pay it back in 90 days, he'd repossess the truck. I walked out with a check for $8,000 and a sick feeling in my stomach. 32,000 total. Still not enough. I called Kessler. "I need to borrow money against my house." "Jack, no. If you do that and the foreclosure goes through, you'll lose everything." "I'll lose everything anyway if I don't try this." "What are you planning?" "I'm going to buy the property at auction." "With what money? You're broke." "I'll have enough to make an opening bid. If I can keep everyone else out, I might win at a low price." "That's insane." "You got a better idea?" He was quiet. Then, "How much do you need?" 50,000. "I don't have that kind of cash just lying around." "Can you get it?" "Jesus, Jack. You're putting me in a terrible position here." "I'm already in a terrible position. I'm just asking for help getting out of it." He sighed. "I'll make some calls, but I'm not promising anything." 2 days before the auction, Kessler called back. "I found a private lender. Hard money. Interest rate is 15%. You'll need to pay it back within 6 months." "What if I can't?" "Then they take your house, and I lose a client." "I'll take it." "Jack, listen to me. This is a huge risk. If anything goes wrong, everything's already wrong. I'm just trying to make it less wrong." The money came through the next day. $50,000 wired to my account. Combined with my savings and the truck loan, I had $82,000. It would have to be enough. The night before the auction, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running scenarios. What if someone else bid anyway? What if the bank set a reserve price? What if I won the bid and couldn't make the payments on the new debt? Every scenario ended badly. At 4 a.m, I got up and made coffee. I sat at the kitchen table with my father's level in my hands. The bubble sat perfectly centered, true and straight. I thought about calling Emily, telling her what I was about to do. But what would I say? That I was gambling everything on a foreclosure auction? That I was borrowing money I couldn't afford to pay back? That I was one bad bid away from losing everything? She wouldn't care. She'd made that clear in Arizona. The auction was scheduled for 10 a.m. at the county courthouse. I got there at 9:30. The room was already filling up. Jennifer Pace was there, standing near the back. She gave me a small nod. Dale Preston was there too, sitting in the front row with a man in a suit I didn't recognize. Bank attorney, probably. There were maybe 20 people scattered around the room, fewer than I'd expected. Maybe Jennifer's calls had worked. At exactly 10, the auctioneer walked in. He was a heavy man with a voice like gravel. He laid out the terms. Minimum bid was $50,000. Bids would increase in increments of $5,000. Payment due within 10 days, or the property would be re-auctioned. Property address is 1847 East Market Street, he said. Approximately 12,000 square feet, mixed-use commercial. Sold as is. No warranties expressed or implied. Building inspection reports available for review. Do we have an opening bid? Silence. Nobody moved. The auctioneer looked around the room. Folks, we need an opening bid to proceed. $50,000 to start. More silence. I raised my hand. We have 50,000. Do I hear 55? Silence. 55,000? Anyone? Preston leaned over and whispered something to the attorney. The attorney stood up. 60,000. The auctioneer pointed at him. 60,000. Do I hear 65? I raised my hand. 65. 65,000. Do I hear 70? The attorney looked at Preston. Preston shook his head. The attorney sat down. 70,000? Anyone? Going once at 65,000? A woman in the back raised her hand. I recognized her. One of the developers Jennifer had contacted. 70,000. My stomach tightened. 70,000. Do I hear 75? I raised my hand. 75,000. Do I hear 80? The woman hesitated, then shook her head. 80,000. Going once at 75,000? Silence. Going twice. I held my breath. Sold. $75,000 to bidder number 12. The gavel came down. I'd won. The room cleared out slowly. Preston approached me at the door. Congratulations, Mr. Brennan. You just bought a worthless building. Better than letting the bank keep my house. The loan balance was $375,000. You paid $75,000. You still owe us $300,000. Not exactly. Under Michigan law, the deficiency is limited to the difference between the auction price and the fair market value. And fair market value for this property is about $70,000. So actually, I don't owe you anything. He stared at me. You'll never prove that in court. I've got 12 inspection reports that say otherwise, plus testimony from every commercial real estate broker in the city. Want to see them? His jaw tightened. We'll be in touch. I'm sure you will. I walked out into the October cold. My hands were shaking. My legs felt weak. I'd just spent $75,000 I didn't have on a building I didn't want. But I'd done it. I'd kept my house. For now. Jennifer caught up with me in the parking lot. That was gutsy. That was stupid. Maybe. But it worked. What are you going to do with the property? I have no idea. I meant what I said. I'll list it for you. We can probably get $80,000 if we market it right. Pay off your auction debt and walk away clean. Assuming someone's willing to buy it. Someone will. This city's full of optimists. I got in my truck and drove home. The check for the auction was due in 10 days. I had $32,000 in my account. I'd need to come up with another $43,000. I called Tommy. I won the auction. Jesus, Jack. You actually did it. Now I need to figure out how to pay for it. How much do you need? $43,000 by next week. You don't have that. I know. So what are you going to do? I thought about my house, about the title loan on my truck, about the hard money loan from Kessler's contact. I'm going to sell everything I own, I said. I spent the next week stripping my life down to the essentials. Tools I didn't need daily went on Craigslist. My TV, my laptop, my father's coin collection that I'd been saving. Everything that wasn't nailed down. I made $11,000, still short. I called my credit card company and asked for a cash advance. They gave me $15,000 at a 29% interest rate. I called my bank and begged for a personal line of credit. They gave me $10,000. I called my cousin in Detroit, who I hadn't spoken to in 8 years. He wired me $5,000 and told me I'd better pay him back. On October 24th, I walked into the courthouse with a cashier's check for $75,000 and handed it to the clerk. She stamped the receipt and handed me a copy. Congratulations. You're now the owner of 1847 East Market Street. I walked out holding the paper like it was a winning lottery ticket, except it wasn't. It was a deed to a building I couldn't afford, bought with money I didn't have, to save a house that was mortgaged to the rafters. I'd won. But I'd also lost everything. November came in like a funeral. Cold rain that turned to sleet. Wind that cut through your coat. The sky stayed gray for days. I was broke. My savings account had $400 in it. My credit cards were maxed. I owed money to people I'd never be able to pay back, but I still had my house. For now. The bills started arriving like clockwork. The hard money loan payment, the title loan on my truck, minimum payments on 5 different credit cards. I did the math. I needed to bring in at least $3,000 a month just to stay current. I worked every job I could find. I worked 16-hour days. I worked weekends. I worked nights, plumbing, electrical, drywall, anything that paid. On November 8th, Jennifer called. I've got interest in the property. What kind of interest? A developer. He's looking at the whole Market Street corridor. Thinks it might be the next up-and-coming neighborhood. Did you tell him about the foundation? I disclosed everything. He doesn't care. He's planning to tear it down and build new. How much is he offering? $70,000. I'd paid $75,000. That's less than I paid. It's also cash, close in 30 days, and you walk away with your conscience clear. I need $80,000 just to break even. Then we wait for a better offer. But Jack, I'm going to be honest with you. That property's been on the market for 6 days. This is the only offer we've gotten. There might not be a better one. I thought about the bills stacking up on my kitchen table, about the interest accruing on 5 different debts. Tell him I'll take $75,000. He's not going to go up. Then tell him I'll take $70,000 and he can have the property in 2 weeks instead of 30 days. She called back an hour later. He'll do it. $70,000, close in 14 days. Make it happen. 2 weeks later, I signed the papers. $70,000 deposited into my account. I paid off the auction debt, paid the first installment on the hard money loan, paid the title loan on my truck, made minimum payments on my credit cards. When the dust settled, I had $300 left, but I still had my house, and I was done bleeding. On December 1st, I got a call from Kessler. Brian's attorney contacted me. They want to settle. Settle what? Everything. The lawsuit, the countersuit. They're willing to drop all claims if you drop yours. Why would they do that? Because they know they're going to lose. The foreclosure, the auction, the property sale, it all proves fraud. If we go to trial, Brian's going to be destroyed. He's trying to cut his losses. What about Emily? She's included in the settlement. Both of them walk away clean. No judgments, no damages. And what do I get? You get your house. No deficiency judgment. No further liability. It's over. I sat at my kitchen table looking at the bills still stacked there. At my bank account showing $300. At the empty spaces where my TV and laptop used to be. What if I say no? What if I want to take them to trial? Then you spend the next 6 months in court, spend money you don't have on legal fees, and even if you win, Brian doesn't have any assets to collect against. You'll get a judgment you can't enforce. So they win. They don't win. They get away. There's a difference. I thought about Emily, about the phone calls she wouldn't answer, about the look on her face in Arizona when she said, "I can't help you." Tell them I'll think about it. Don't think too long. The offer expires in a week. That night, I drove to East Market Street one last time. The building was already gone. A crew had demolished it the week before. Now it was just an empty lot with a chain-link fence around it. The developer's sign out front said, "Coming soon, Market Street Crossing." I stood there looking at the empty space, all that money, all that stress, all those lies, and it came down to this. An empty lot in a neighborhood nobody wanted. My phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Dad?" Emily's voice. Quiet. Shaky. "Emily, I heard about the settlement offer. How'd you hear about that?" "Brian told me. He wants you to take it." "I bet he does." "Dad, I'm sorry." The words hung there in the cold air. "For what?" I said. "For all of it. For lying to you. For for dragging you into this, for choosing him over you. You're still choosing him. I have to. I'm having his baby. That doesn't mean you have to stay with him. Yes, it does. You don't understand. I don't have anywhere else to go. No job, no money, no savings. Everything's in his name. If I leave him, I have nothing. You'd have me. She was quiet for a long time. I could hear her breathing, could hear the tears she was trying to hold back. I'm afraid, she said finally. Of what? Of being alone? Of raising a baby by myself? Of failing? You're already failing, Emily. You're just failing with company. That's not fair. None of this is fair. But that doesn't mean you get to use a baby as an excuse to stay with a criminal. He's not a criminal. He committed fraud. He stole $400,000. He destroyed my credit and almost cost me my house. What would you call that? A mistake. A mistake is forgetting to pay a bill. What Brian did was calculated, planned, executed. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. She was crying now, really crying. I don't know what to do. Take the settlement, leave him, come home. I can't. Why not? Because I love him. The words hit me like a hammer. You love him. Yes. The man who lied to you, who used you, who put your name on legal documents that made you liable for his fraud. You love that man. I know he's not perfect, but nobody is, and I made a commitment. I took vows. Vows that he broke the second he started lying to you. Maybe, but I'm not ready to give up on him yet. I looked at the empty lot, at the space where a building used to be. Then there's nothing else to say. Dad, I'll take the settlement, not because Brian wants me to, not because it's what's best for him, but because I'm tired. I'm tired of fighting. I'm tired of watching you defend someone who doesn't deserve it. I'm tired of all of it. Thank you. Don't thank me. This doesn't fix anything. It just ends it. I know. And Emily? When it all falls apart, and it will fall apart, don't call me to pick up the pieces. You made your choice. You get to live with it. I hung up. I stood there for another minute, then got in my truck and drove home. The settlement papers arrived 3 days later. I read through them twice. Then I signed them and mailed them back. It was over. Christmas came and went. I spent it alone. Patricia sent a card. Tommy stopped by with a six-pack. Kessler called to say congratulations, but Emily didn't call. January was long and cold. I worked, paid bills, tried to rebuild what was left of my credit, tried to figure out how to live with less than I'd had before. On January 15th, Tommy called. I thought you should know. Brian's in trouble. What kind of trouble? The Attorney General's office opened an investigation. Turns out you weren't the only victim. 3 other people came forward. Similar pattern. Fraudulent loans, fake development projects, borrowed money that disappeared. When did this happen? Last week. They froze his assets, seized his business records. Emily was questioned too. Is she being charged? Not yet. Depends what they find. But it doesn't look good. I should have felt something. Satisfaction, vindication, relief. But I felt nothing. Just a hollow space where anger used to be. Thanks for letting me know. Jack? You did the right thing. Walking away. Not everyone would have. I didn't have a choice. Sure you did. You could have kept fighting. You could have destroyed yourself trying to destroy him. But you didn't. That takes strength. Doesn't feel like strength. It never does. That's how you know it's real. He hung up. I sat at my kitchen table and looked around. The house was quieter than ever. Emptier. The TV was gone, the laptop, most of my tools, everything I'd sold to survive. But it was still mine. I walked to my workshop in the garage. My father's toolbox sat on the bench, dented and scratched and worn. I opened it and took out the level. The bubble still sat perfectly centered, true and straight. I thought about my father, about 40 years in a machine shop, about lung cancer at 62, and I understood something I hadn't before. He hadn't died with nothing. He died with his dignity intact, his integrity uncompromised, his character uncorrupted. That was worth more than any property, any profit, any pile of money. I put the level back in the toolbox and closed the lid. Then I went back inside and made dinner. Tomorrow I'd work. I'd pay bills. I'd keep rebuilding. But tonight, I'd rest. Because I'd survived, and sometimes survival is enough.